Good morning and welcome to the Operations and Monitoring Committee on the 9th day of May 2019. And normally I come and just browse over my notes and that about half an hour before the meeting starts. But this morning I was engrossed in my passion, which is sport, and I watched on TV one of the most exciting... I'm not a soccer fan, never have been, but I've been a Tottenham Hotspur supporter since I was a kid. And Tottenham Hotspur were down 2-0 at half-time, and they were in the final of the UEFA Cup against Liverpool on the 1st of June. They beat Ajax 3-2 on aggregate. No. So any sports fan would certainly understand. So I'm sure there were many people who are watching this morning who were engrossed in it as well. Just before we do start the meeting, I just think it's appropriate, who worship the mayor will probably do it at full council, but to I know who worship and Councillor Maxwell and others went down to the mammoth tangi of Wharehuri and Milroy, iconic gentlemen in our community and in terms of te reo and all things that are Māori, and I'm sure the mayor and the chief executive and staff and elected members join me in passing on our condolences to the Milroy family, who have a huge interest in Rotorua. Okay, firstly, I'll declare the meeting open, and I would like to welcome those members of the public that are here today. I hope you enjoy the proceedings and take notes, and if you've got any questions after the meeting, elected members are more than welcome, more than happy to answer those. The meeting has been live streamed, and one thing I noticed, I watched it for the first time, watched full council. It's absolutely imperative, and it was driven home to me, you don't hear anything unless the microphones are on, and members of the public, it's as though they've got their hearing aids turned off. You can't hear a thing, not even shuffling of paper. So these microphones are absolutely crucial. Just make sure your mobile phones are turned off. Mine is. It's behind me on the floor. But I'm more than happy to have a break at 11 o'clock for members to have a look at these mobiles just to see if there's any urgent items. I'll call for apologies. I have one for Rawiri Waru for lateness. He'll be about 10 minutes late. He's down at the Milroy Tangi. And I do have an apology for Hotawa Basani Tuli. Are there any other apologies? Move, Councillor...
Mr Chairman, I have to leave early. I will possibly have to leave early, please, this afternoon.
Okay.
Thank you.
So about midday? Midday. Thank you, Mr Martin. So the motion has been moved, Councillor Okawate, seconded, Mr Martin. The apologies from Rawiri Watu for lateness and Potawa Fasani Tuli be accepted. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I ask any declarations of interest as per detailed on page 1 of the agenda, where it advises councillors on the best course of action. It's up to the individual councillor to take that action if they so desire. Are there any declarations of interest? There appear to be none, thank you. Right, are there any urgent items not on the agenda that need to be raised today that cannot wait or are non-operational? Councillor Gould.
Yeah, I'd like to read out a statement which is on my phone, but I'll explain the reason why in a minute. The issue is on the 13th of May, next Monday, the toilets at the Tinai shops are going to be decommissioned. The number of retailers in that particular area are not very happy with the process.
Order, Mr.
Point
Chairman.
of order, Your Worship.
That's an operational issue. It's something that we're all aware of. It's not an urgent item.
No, you're hold the point of order. Councillor Gould, if you have some concerns regarding the Tinai shop toilets, they are on private land, and if you have any concerns, can you go through the appropriate director, one of whom sits behind us, to see whether council has any interest in that matter. Are there any other items of urgent business that need raising today? They appear to be done. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now turn to page 7 of the agenda, and we've got a pretty hefty agenda this morning with a couple of presentations and the CCOs from the airport, etc., to be presented. So we'll move to the minutes of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting held on the 4th of April 2019. Would someone like to move that they are a true record? Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Seconded, Councillor Maxwell. Are there any matters that members want to raise or need clarification? You appear to be not. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next one is a presentation on the lakefront design update, which has been held in public session. Portia Mackenzie and John Paul Gaston are going to give us an update, and they're going to cover the issues, for example, like the toilets, Memorial Drive, the playground, and yeah, I understand you've got a presentation, some images to share with us. Welcome to you both, and I know you've both been working really hard on this particular project. Just before you start, welcome Mr. Waru. Go for it. Thank you, Mr. Gaston.
Good morning, everyone, and morena. So just, councillors, we just thought it was really important for us to give you an update on where we've got to with the design of the playground and Memorial Drive. So this update is really focused in on that. And just for those who would like to have an understanding of how the rest of the program is progressing, we're looking at bringing back a fuller lakefront program presentation to the next Operation and Monitoring Committee. So we really thought it was important for us to present to you where we'd got to with the design of the playground and Memorial Drive. We've gone through a reasonably extensive process to make sure that some young people and children were involved in helping us shape the design for that, and so it's for us very important that we had that opportunity just to see the work that they have undertaken with us and how that's being taken forward into that design. So I'm just going to hand over to Portia to lead us through that process.
Before you go forward, you said, so how many children were involved and where did they all come from? Are you going to cover that, Portia?
Morena tātou. I'm really excited to show you some of the detail that's come out of this process because it was a really neat and collaborative process with the tamariki. So we want to be able to show this for you today and then also take it back to them and show them how their input has actually helped design the playground. So we held the workshops back in the end of January. There were 4 workshops held up at Te Akamori, up on the top floor in our Discovery Centre, and over 100 tamariki came along and participated in those workshops. And so what happened was we actually got the designers down. They came along and did a bit of a presentation on what their role is and what their job is, and all those children got to ask questions of the designers as well. And then they explained that, you know, we've got a really good playground and we want to see, we want to ask you what you want to see in that playground. So the children were each given individual packs, which had lots of different craft items in there, and they were really just given free rein to design and come up with what they wanted to see in that playground space. So this is some of the images that came out of those workshops. So you can see down the left-hand side there all the children interacting with each other because they got a really good opportunity to actually chat with each other and have a good conversation about what they like to see in playgrounds and what their favourite playgrounds are around the city. And then what we could see coming through was some really key themes that were popular, those items that were definites that we needed to incorporate into the design. So what you see there are lots of talks of different types of swings. We have climbing structures. There was also mention of scooter wheel type tracks as well. And then also something for the older children, so more for the youth, for more basketball type stuff as well. We also held one of these workshops in full te reo Māori as well. So we definitely got that bilingual feedback coming through as well. So the other thing that the designers did was they got an opportunity to go down and have a look at the volcanic playground and the current situation down there. what the existing equipment is like and what condition it's in. And what they did was a bit of an assessment to see what could be kept, and some of the items are starting to come to the end of their lifetime and looking for renewal anyway. So we thought, well, here's an opportunity to take those bits out and put some of that stuff that the tamariki suggested into in the workshops as well. So what you see here, and I'm going to use the new pointer, what you see here is some of the items that are going to be removed. So this is the stuff that was identified to be taken out. And this is the existing playground there that will be retained and kept and built upon. So sort of remember the size of this footprint, because what you'll see in the coming pictures is this incorporated into the design as well. So just overall where the playground sits in terms of the space for the lakefront. So you see the village green there. And on either side, we've got some really good expanded parking cells. So into Memorial Drive there and into Tanakai Street, you can arrive and you can park on either side. And then also there's an existing toilet feature. There's an existing toilet building that's on the in Memorial Drive. So that's been revamped recently. So that will be kept there. And we've got a new toilet going to be put into at the end of Tanakai Street here. So there's some real symmetry to it, because you've got parking on either side, then it comes to a toilet building that's really close to the parking, and then also the play space comes right through the middle here. So our existing playground's around about in here, and the new playground's enlarged about 3 times the size of the volcanic playground. So this is what's come out of the workshops and the designers incorporating those features into the overall design. So what you see here are big, large concentric rings there. That the largest one is about 150 metres in circumference. The inner ring is about 80 metres, and these rings are have different elevation. It has different banking and different widths and different colours, and so it's a really neat space to come along. You can play on them without any equipment, or you can also bring along some of your wheels as well and get involved on that. The outside ring's fully accessible as well, so you know it's good for wheelchairs and electric scooters as well. And the inner ring is more for the younger children, so it's kind of been broken down into some variety of age groups and abilities as well. Here I'll show you where the existing playground is, so you get some kind of context as to the size of it. This is the existing playground down here, and that's the parts that's going to be retained. Next to it you'll see there's basket swings. The Flying Fox was a definite must-have from the workshops, so that's been included in there, and we've actually got a dual Flying Fox, so it gets some a bit of competition amongst the tamariki as well. Yeah. So what the adults also wanted to see was, we were getting a lot of feedback from the adults that they wanted to be catered for as well while they're down there. They want to have the space where they can sit and watch and have a cup of coffee and enjoy themselves as well. So we wanted to make sure that there's lots of spaces for them to sit and watch their tamariki having a good time. Also up here, what you'll see is the basketball court, the half court, that's been incorporated in there as well. And then over here is the toilet facility, the new toilet facility. That's a fully accessible toilet facility. Enlarged, we've got lots of space in there should buses arrive as well, like I said, fully accessible. It's sort of the only one in the Bay of Plenty type of toilet, so that should be able to really cater for a real variety of people that are coming down and visiting the lakefront. There was a lot of feedback from the whānau and the adults saying that they wanted to make sure that the children were safe, that they weren't going to sort of run off and run towards sort of car parking areas and that. So what we're looking at doing is incorporating some of the existing materials from the lakefront edge down into the design. The designers have gone down and assessed the timber that's down on the lakefront and said, yes, we can definitely reuse some of that into the lakefront, into the playground. So what you see there in the red colours is the timber coming into the design, and that forms a really solid edge between the playground space and the walkways. So this is just some of the design detail around those large rings that are a real key feature into the design, and some of the colours and the banking that's been designed into that. So what you see here is the variety of users that, you know, you can come along and you can run and play if you don't bring equipment with you. If you do bring equipment, then you can play on that as well, or you can sit on it and it's fully accessible also.
Before we move on to Memorial Drive, councillors, just to summarise that, again, the feedback we had is, and that desire to see a variety of ages being catered for within the equipment that's currently provided, is a key destination playground for the city. A desire to see a lot of the timber and some elements reused and revamped, so we've tried to make sure we're doing that as much as possible. That this playground will be 3 times bigger than the current playground area. So again, that was one of the reasons why we just highlighted we were retaining the existing equipment, and obviously the extension going west through to a new toilet block. There's been a lot of work done on making sure there's improved accessibility, so the pathways leading through the playground, around it, but also using the landscape form to provide that separation. Again, some of the parental feedback was making sure there was that separation. People talked about having fences to keep children and the younger kids in their particular areas. We've stayed away from fences, but used changes in height and gardens and forms to keep that kind of separation. That's certainly what the designers have done. And obviously there's additional barbecue area within that, seating areas and gathering areas amongst the playground as well. So the other part of it is obviously with modern, newer playgrounds is to actually use the landscaping itself as play features. So there will be sort of undulations, hillocks. The use of that timber gives children the ability to have that sort of informal play as well, whether they walk along the fence edge or the dividing seats. And of course, the other key piece is to make sure we've got some improved toilet facilities on both the western side and an upgrade to the toilets on the eastern side, on the Memorial Drive side. So that's just the summary of the playground area. We were just looking now to go on to the Memorial Drive, but I suppose we could take some questions now if that's appropriate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Rob, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Just the new toilet provision, are we including the showers in there that were talked about earlier?
So we did take that into consideration last time you raised this, and we went through a bit of a design process whether or not we were going to include them into this building, but we've sort of come back around and we're looking to include them up closer around where the whare waka is going to be, into more of a stage 5 type location closer to the lake, so that it can be used for those other purposes as well. So definitely will be in there somewhere, but just not in this toilet facility.
Thank you.
And I think the key on this toilet block is to remember it's got the relationship with the lakefront reserve users, the children's area particularly, but it's also the most accessible toilet from where the coaches will be dropping off passengers who will be using the various activities on the lake edge, volcanic air or Lakeland Crend or Katoa's jet boats.
Councillor O'Gower-Tate.
Thank you for the presentation so far. I was just wondering where the parents sit and watch the children. Is there going to be any provision for one of those lovely mobile coffee carts? Do you envisage anything like that there, or do they have to go right down the other end?
Yes, we've definitely made sure that there are provisions there for that type of facility, and of course there's Archie's down there already as well, and we're having a conversation about where that's going to be located with Archie's here.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good presentation. My query, please, is that you've identified or intend to do quite a few ponding areas. Can you bring up that slide, if it's possible, please? That'll do. Mr. Chairman, my only concerns are is that when you start to bring water into small areas, it starts to go off, and you need to keep the water flushed. There's got to be a way, and I assume you may have already done that, but if you don't keep that water clean and clear, you're going to get stagnant, you're going to get mosquitoes and things like that. So can you take that into consideration when you're designing something that's small?
Point those areas out for us.
The only thing I can imagine Mr. Martin's referring to is right on the lake edge. Is that where you're talking about, or?
I thought I did see some smaller ponding areas, but perhaps I'm incorrect.
No. Councillor Maxwell?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the updates. I just wanted to touch on the one that you said, improve toilet provisions, and that can just urging, can you ask for consideration be given for people like us who take our mokopuna down there and inevitably, I want to go to the toilet. And so you go along there, then you kind of stop because you're not going to go in with them to take them. They wonder why you can't. If there's a separate one which just sort of is not the male or the female or boys or girls, it's just, and you're standing there and you're feeling kind of sheepish. People think you're some nasty little fella down there or something, but it's just, a couple of times that has happened, and for me, and I see others, and I've talked to others who are standing there, said, well, maybe if there's one little cubicle with something that just makes it a bit more friendly safety.
Yes, we do have a larger cubicle for that purpose, for disabilities, but also for parenting type cubicle. Also on the toilet facility, there will be external hand washing basins, so that will be on the outside. So even if you're out there having some lunch or something and you need to go and wash your hands or take the children up there, then there's external hand washing facilities as well.
Councillor Gould.
Mr. Chairman, can you tell us the time frame for this part of the project of the lakefront to be completed by, please? Because how long are you expecting for it to take? Are you expecting it to take 2 years, or are you expecting it to be done in the next 12 months?
Councillors, we were going to just put that on the summary at the end, but I can answer that question off. One of the issues in the western side where the toilet block is and the track area, we need to undertake some preloading. So we will be looking in the next month or so to put some soil on there. It's just under 1 metre in height, apparently, just to get that preloading in place, because we don't want any movement of the soil. Through that process, we'll be going into preparing and issuing the tender documents for this piece of the work. So if you take that approach, possibly through tender processes, we could be starting as early as August, probably more likely to be September.
Yeah, and how long, JP?
Again, we just need to work through that with the contractor. One of the things we're trying very hard to do is just to keep talking to our operators to make sure we don't impose on them too much disruption. As you're aware, Archie sits in that vicinity, so we just need to work through with them about how we for example, put the preloading behind them and don't interfere with the business at the moment, and just start preparing for that work. So I can't give you a timetable for how long the works would take at this stage, but it's likely to be 3 to 6 months to complete most of that.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The tripling of the size of the playground, I guess you're also envisaging tripling the number of children that make use of it and tripling the capacity of the toilets and so forth. The toilets that are going to be replaced, is that going to be a service toilet, or is it still going to be as is existing twice a day visits from council staff?
It's a very good question, actually. One of the things we need to look at is because of these toilets will be designed to cope with higher usage. However, higher usage also calls into question higher standards of cleaning, and so I don't know if this currently is a tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 toilet for cleaning, but we may have to look at the frequency of the cleaning of this. So our expectations would be, because of the location of this toilet and its importance, particularly for those visiting the various attractions there as well as the playgrounds, we may have to review the level of cleaning provided there.
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Portia and JP. My question is that this is such a mammoth of a project, and I hope all goes well. My concern is for local contractors. Are they going to be competing on a national against national contractors? Because Sir Bob Harvey has been instrumental in gearing this project. Is he going to get his team involved in how Vineyard Kota went, or are we going to try and retain it as much as we can for the local economy?
Councillor, I think we're not deviating from the procurement approach that is agreed by this council and has been in place since we last reviewed the procurement strategy. The expectations we have from government is that there is open procurement. However, within our procurement strategy, there is a loading of about 5%, I think is the number, provided for local. And one of the things that we're doing, and it's an important part of the work being undertaken here, is to get an understanding of the economic multiplying value to our community. So when people submit their tenders for the work, obviously price is important, there is the local loading, but we're also asking about how many people are being used locally, and what's the approach being taken by those local providers or any provider in the far as employment is concerned. So we are interested in those other factors, sort of the social procurement aspects, but as I say, we are interested in seeing as much as possible and as much as we can within our existing procurement rules that it supports local.
Councillor Kumar, happy with that? Okay. Just before I ask your worship to sum up, at next month's meeting, Portia or JP, can we have a sample of when you bring back that full report, can you bring us a sample of the surface? You've got a couple of samples in the report. And are we going to, what is concerning me down there is that we've got an anti-smoking policy. So number 2, where those toilets are, and the ones down, are we seriously going to enforce the no smoking? Because busloads of certain types of tourists end up down there, and as soon as they get off the bus, it's puff, 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 chuck it on the ground, puff, 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 go and use the toilet, puff, 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 get on the bus, and they're gone. So I just wondered if we were going to do that. So that's another. You've covered my other question with the bring up of the child changing area, which is really important. But one thing with most of us around this table have got grandchildren, you know how quick they can move. I just wondered, is there, like, you've got the timber flow, which I think is really important, but is there a natural barrier between the play area, especially for the under 5s or even under 8s, between the play area and the cars, in the car parking area? So there's that one, and by retaining aspects of number 11, which is the original Holmes volcanic playground, is that going to save us considerable funding in terms of the budget over the project? And are we looking to complete this within 18 months? I think that was the basis of Councillor Gould's question too, because we're going to have to close off parts of that area, aren't we?
I'll start trying to answer those off, and Portia might just come in and just help me out there. I think probably starting with the last question was within 18 months. The completion of that section through there is absolutely possible and will be done within the 18 months. So that's a very easy piece for us to do. The question then about parking, obviously that one of the key design elements is to take the car park off the separation between where the playground is and the lake. So, that's a people zone now. So what we haven't got on a slide here is actually some of that height difference in contouring means that that there is almost gardens and slightly raised elements to try and keep particularly the under fives within the area. And councillors, as far as the parking areas are concerned, obviously we've got Tutanakai Street off to the west, which is almost out of where the legend is. So there is a reasonable distance separation there. And similarly, if you go east, and those who will know the volcanic playground at the moment, there's a reasonably long distance between the current edge of the playground on the east and the toilet block, and then subsequently out to Memorial Drive. So there is a reasonable level of separation between the car parking areas and obviously where the children will be. And as parking areas, they're not mainly road areas, so the speed is also down. So there is the sort of the physical slowing of children running off in different directions by the landscaping, but there is a reasonable separation from the roads. Oh, yeah.
Oh, by retaining aspects of number 11 from the original Holmes Volcanic Playground, which a lot of children actually put their pocket money into, and I'm pleased to see that the kids wanted to retain certain aspects of that. Will that be factored in and save us in terms of the budget overall?
Yes, it is saved us because actual play equipment is quite expensive, so it is saving us some money. But one of the things that will be undertaken in there is that we will be changing some of the contours around them and the surface that's underneath the playground as well. So it will be modernised and consistent then with the look of the expanded playground. So
excellent. Thank you. I've got two other questions that I've allowed, and then I'll get a worship to sum up. Councillor Kumar, you had another short question.
Thank you so much for that, Chair. My other question is, I had to sort of talk to Rob Kendra on some advice of that, and he told me that yes, most of the council's reserves are smoke-free. I'm just wondering whether if there was a bylaw for vape now, because when people vape, it's more like a chimney than what the smoke's barely visible, but vaping is, and there's no law against vaping. So are we going to be able to look into that for this place, or is vaping going to be allowed?
I understood it was considered exactly the same.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Councillor, so I'll have to come back with an answer to that.
Thank you.
Councillor Tapsell finally, then her worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Portia and JP, for this presentation. And I just want to also acknowledge the library staff who hosted the workshops. I was lucky enough to go along to one. I'm still young enough, it wasn't too weird to be there. And I took along my siblings, and there was some amazing ideas that came out of it. But there were some really cool ones that I thought may have got on the board to make it iconically Rotorua. Like, I'm extremely happy with what you have. I think it's going to be wonderful for a variety of ages. But there were some really cool concepts that came out, like having a slide designed the shape of a coda, and incorporating Māori designs, and and the and having parkour. So parkour, but in the mountains surrounding the Rotorua district in the lake, so they can jump from one mountain to another. So there were some creative aspects that came up that I hope aren't too late to incorporate into the detailed design. I understand this illustrative plan is more so where things will be. Yes, I just wanted to ensure that that was still going to come through. My second question was whether there will be anything on the village green side, because I know there are a lot of adults, and that village green is, you can see people going down and doing like fitness groups and stuff using that space, and whether we could incorporate some adult playgrounds and some free fitness parks in there. And the last question I did have was just around the tourism and all the Asians that bring the buses in, particularly our Asian visitors here, which are a significant market, and we do see them frequently in the lakefront. So I just had a question about whether you had talked with the tourism industry, either through Rotorua Economic Development or some of the tourism agents that frequently bring the buses in, because that will add a very big footprint. in terms of using our public facilities like the footpaths, but also around the parking area and the play spaces too, and whether you've incorporated the logistics of this mass number of tourists that do come through on buses through that area, as well as the locals that enjoy it.
So just on your first question, there's a lot more detail within this playground that I haven't brought forward. That was incorporated from those workshops as well. So like in sense of the parkour type stuff, up by the half court, that there's some real elevation changes around there that they're incorporating. So there's definitely some real opportunities for that in there. Also, all of those climbing structures that they designed have been included in there. Some of that cultural narrative will definitely be included all throughout the whole of the lakefront as well, but that's just detail that we just haven't included in that presentation at the moment.
And I was going to say, just adding to that, there's certainly been this discussion too about, as we're reusing some of the timber from the lake edge, certainly the designers are interested in sort of bringing flora and fauna, whether we can just have it etched or carved into different things. So, depending on the age of children, there's almost this discovery thing of going looking for where's the kura, where's the picture of such and such. So all those different things that good designs now are bringing into multi-layering of activities that children can do in playgrounds.
And the other question of Councillor Tapsell was, and I saw this on the Gold Coast in January, the adult fitness pursuit type outdoor gym activity, because I think if we can get a multi-purpose of use down there and do it once and do it properly, it would be amazing.
We're actually been talking to Henry and his team about whether it's right to do that here, or so we're actually taking a wider city kind of perspective of that. So again, it's this case of, do you drop the odd piece here or there, or whether you focus particular parks to say actually Kura Park might be the right place, or so we're actually still, that's a bit of refinement that we're still looking at doing, and that's so we're just having that thinking discussion about is it right to put some pieces in many locations, or actually just try and actually focus ourselves on particular areas and do them particularly well.
Thank you, JP. Mayor Chadwick?
I think it's we're seeing flesh on the bones now, and people did complain about the lakefront because they didn't understand the process of involving others to build the picture, and now we're seeing it roll out. It's nice to hear councillors all supporting getting on with it, actually. That's very exciting. I am very supportive of some adult activity. I know Councillor Rotorua Tate wants a coffee, but I also down there with 8 grandchildren, and I want to do something. I don't just want to sit on a grass knoll. So I'd love some aspect of, a bit of passive exercise, because I can't go away and I'm stuck there for about an hour and a half because they love the space. So I think little bits incorporated. I know you're talking to Henry, but please, we'd love to see that. Something for us that constant, the only activity is putting them on the swing, and that drives you crazy. The other is the sustainability thinkers locally have sort of asked, you've got your designers and they've involved workshops with children and you're listening to us, but the sustainability aspects, can you just cover off how they may have been able to be involved? I'm thrilled to see some sustainability elements as fundamental to the design, like the reuse of wood. But there are others that might have a view that if they could throw it in at this stage, could be of huge value into the end design.
I think I'd probably back through Rosemary, then we'll just make sure that we're involving the groups and the representative we've got. As I say, the designers have taken the brief from us to say, look, we want to see as much reused, repurposed, and not just discarded. So that's why I think we're quite excited about the reuse of the timber, particularly. The cobbles are being taken away to be potentially used in other locations as well. So, and even the equipment that will be removed, we'll make some assessments of whether that can be passed on, reset or re-established as well. So we're doing our best to make sure that that this is as a significant improvement redevelopment project. It's also a case of not throwing away as much.
Well, they have a second part of their presentation, which was regarding Memorial Drive. Oh, sorry, Your Worship.
tiny bit on the half court. It just does remind us that we have an icon locally, Stephen Adams, that wanted to dot goals everywhere. I can't think of a more prominent place than there for a Stephen Adams goal. Yeah.
So the second part of this presentation is around some of the detail for Memorial Drive. So what we've been doing is we've been working closely with the RSA on this space. So in discussions with them, they really would like to keep the gateway features, so the large walls with the plaques on there. But also they felt that the central area where the plaques are, it's more of a through road. It's more faster traffic through there, and that there's not as much respect for the plaques that are there in the centre area. So what we did was we took that feedback back to our designers to come up with something with a bit more oomph in this area around the memorial type of space. So this is what they've come up with. So we've enlarged the car parking areas in here. It's no longer a through road because we've taken that road out of there. We're really trying to make it the lakefront all about the people rather than about the vehicles. So this is a space to come and park as close as possible to the lakefront there. There's a lot more accessibility, mobility spaces in here as well. We've doubled the amount of mobility spaces in here. Overall, the car parking is overall over the whole of the lakefront. The car parking is not reduced. We've increased the amount of bus car parking as well, and we've really got a much better variety of car parking types down at the lakefront out of the designs. So what you see there in one of the buildings on the bottom left is the existing toilet that's there now. And so what we've done is we're looking at more of a memorial plaza type space rather than a memorial drive. So those plaques that are existing down in the centre area, down at the gateway, will be relocated up into this space, which is more of a memorial plaza. It gives a real space for reflection. And we're in discussions with the RSAs that they would like to see a lot more plaques added to really reflect all of the spaces where our armed forces have served as well. So in working with them, we will make sure that we've got all of those plaques included in there as well. Overall, there's an additional 91 new trees planted in here, so it's a real, it's a much more quieter, passive type space. It gives that location for any of the for the parades to start from here that on Anzac Day that end up at the government gardens, and the space for the car parking area is really flat. There's a lot less curbing, so that we can use that space for events as well. So I think that's a really good outcome as to where we've arrived for Memorial Plaza.
I think probably the other thing I'll just add in, and it's been a question asked quite often, is the preservation of that view shaft as you come from Fenton Street looking out towards the lake in Mokoia. So whilst you can see there's a lot of green shown in that sort of plan, if you look down towards the picture, just an example picture in the bottom right, a lot of it is low, and with a view that we're keeping a really open view shaft heading out towards the lake as well, which to entice people down.
One of the submissions I've had whilst we've been going through this process, and with the announcement of the provincial funding that came through, was one particular lady said there are a number of trees down there that are of historic importance, of national significance, planted by the Queen, the Creek veterans, and etc. etc. And I just wondered, are we treating them in a similar fashion? In terms of, I'm sure the RSA has had an input into that as well. So, yeah. Could you just give us some assurances that those matters aren't going to be overlooked?
No, they won't be overlooked. And again, this is where a lot of the design work has been tested from an operational maintenance and usability perspective with Henry's team in the sport and recreation area. and obviously they are also the custodians of a lot of that knowledge about some of these historic trees and very important sort of plantings that have been undertaken over the last many decades. So there has been a lot of that work done operationally as well with all of these designs.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Your Worship.
Question. In Canberra, in their Memorial Drive, it's simply stunning with the two handles of the kete that cross as you go into the drive. I love the fact you've moved the orientation of the memorials further down. I will say it, where's the wow factor? I love the playground with its sustainability elements, but where's the true commemoration factor here?
So, some of that detail we just haven't worked through yet with the RSA. There is definitely a lot more layers here that we haven't quite shown yet because we're still working through some of that detail. But there's definitely going to be a lot of that. I wanted to quickly get to more of the wow shot that you were looking for. So,
Got another question. If we could just go back to that diagram.
We're all designers.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bender, you've had your hand up for some time.
Thank you, Chairperson. This, I take it, is going to be moving into the area that's existing with with the hospital at the moment?
No. There's a property boundary on the north of this picture, and obviously it is not our land or our ability to encroach in that space.
As a follow-up, with regards to previous slides on the playground area, which is, as you say, 3 times the size of the existing one, have we, now that you've got this far down track, have we actually got a budget figure in mind for instigating this problem?
Councillors, as we've reported before, we've done, of all the concept plans, we've run the QS picture across it, and we continue to refine those budget estimates as we progress from concept designs through to developed designs and final detailed designs. Ultimately, the last part of that is, are those prices right in the market when we get back tenders? So we have had cost estimates that we've refined as we've proceeded through this piece. I'm just trying to think of what the number is that we've included within the budget for the playground area. I think it was, I think it's about $1 million, isn't it? $1 million has been included as the core budget for this part of the project to do that landscaping and that playground development.
Just one other question I've got with regard to this memorial area. Will the aspects of the 28th Maori Battalion and the Te Aroha Return Servicemen's Association and that the impact, the Ohini Mutu impact during particularly World War II, will that be reflected in that passive area that you're trying to recreate?
yes, those are definitely conversations that will be continuing and ongoing as we detail up this design.
Councillor Gould, finally. Sorry. Oh, and Councillor Kent.
Chairman, thank you, JP, for your report. Can I get a bit of clarification, please? With your diagram on the screen, the left-hand side end part, the white part, is that the Lake Rotorua, or is that just being cut off half the land?
Yes, so from your view on the left-hand side, that is moving towards the lake, yes. But that's just not included in this image. This is a bit of a spotlight just on Memorial Drive.
The track under the car park at the bottom, going from the left to right, or going from the right to the left, is that a walking track?
Yes, that's the existing walking track, that's pathway that's there now.
With cyclists and mobility scooters can use?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Where's the connectivity around to government gardens? Because from this, it looks as if basically any sort of continuation eastwards around the water's edge through to government gardens seems to have stopped.
And I think that's probably where Councillor Gould's question was going to, Councillor. So what you can't see in the white to the left of the diagram then is the continuation of the wide shared paths that continue past out towards or past in front of where the spa will be and where the former scout den was. So all of that lake edge pathways are not shown in this. It's just focusing on the car park. So Councillor Gould's comment was right. You're just seeing almost the lawn and memorial area as opposed to then all the walking areas that go past it.
Thank you.
I think just in summary, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, JP and Portia, thank you for your presentation. I just wondered, you've got some more. Just when you come back to the next round of meetings, there's been a number of questions on budgets and funding and all that sort of thing. I just wondered if you could include in your presentation a summary of where we're at with that, those costings that Councillor Bentley in particular talked about, and where we're sitting with that. Where we've made savings, where we've put those savings into other areas, etc., etc. So carry on, sorry.
Actually, Mr. Chair, and that's probably really helpful, because what we'll be doing there, you can see one of our next steps is to make sure we're starting to do our reporting and progress reporting so that we can receive our money from the Provincial Growth Fund, from MB. Obviously, we've told you previously that our first contract had concluded, the 811,000, and we received all of that funding across the 4 tranches of reporting that we undertook, and we're obviously now starting the same for the forest project and for the lakefront, so we need to proceed through that. So that again means we have to be very clear about what money we've expended to date and what the projections are for government as well. I mentioned earlier the preloading of the playground and the toilet area, so that's important for us to get ready for that, and obviously then preparing tender documents for the playground area and Memorial Plaza. So those are our next steps. And probably the very next slide was just a case of, for those who aren't necessarily as comfortable with the plan view, we just asked Smith to make sure that they could provide one of the seagull views of the lakefront, just so we can get a feel for how it all looks. And the caveat I put on this, because it was raised with the Gifted Reserves Protocol Group, was the scale of the trees. Now, there's not too many tree options that you can bring into these kind of graphics, so those are very generic and bushy trees. There'll be a much more varied size and scale of trees and bushiness, reflecting the kind of native planting we'll be doing there.
JP, I'm sure, and Portia, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all my colleagues here. Congratulations on progress to date. We look forward to your next report. The engagement of the children, I think, it has to be lauded. I think that's, although we did do that, Portia, didn't we, with the residential suburban playgrounds, and they've been ultimately successful. Karinga Park's always got loads and loads of people in it. Asset, Novatara and Puringa Park, just have a look how successful they are. So congratulations, we look forward to your report. Would someone like to move that the lakefront design update be received? Councillor Kent seconded Mr. Waru. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you, it's carried. Thank you. Staff reports on page 11 is the next item on the agenda. Welcome, Thomas. I understand you also have a PowerPoint presentation you want to share with us. We're in your hands, hopefully some good news again.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors and board members. To my left, I'll just introduce Pete Kearney. He's our business partner manager in the finance team, so he's responsible for helping put all the financial reports together. So I just thought I'd introduce him to the team and just give him a bit of exposure to the hot seat.
Welcome, Peter.
So next time I'm sick or ill, he can take my place. See how this works. So on that, we'll take the report as obviously read and just go through a quick presentation for you. So overall, council is on track. Our favourable position against budget the previous month has halved, but we are still about 400,000 better than budget. You are aware we are experiencing quite some significant pressure in a couple of key expense areas, being particularly electricity, as well as legal costs and some parking revenues pressures. But overall, at the moment, savings elsewhere in the organisation are helping to offset that.
Excellent.
Just for reference, where we sit 9 months in, the revenues year to date are about 85 or close to 86 million. Approximately half of that is from the general rates. Targeted rates are contributing another 32%. So overall, our total revenue at the moment is 82% from rating revenue. And we are in the process of obviously just chasing capital subsidies as our capital works progresses, and that will help change that percentage in the coming months. And again, we've spent 65.5 million on operational expenditure. So the difference between the two is obviously the cash contribution towards the renewal of our infrastructure and paying our finance costs.
Mm-hmm.
If we take the result and just present it a little bit slightly different in the way that we report back to our community, this is where it would look like with regards to the variance against budget. And I know there'll be an eagle-eyed councillor that'll probably point out that the variance there is slightly different from the report, and that's due to rounding. So I'll just preempt that one. In the main, though, there are really 4 to 5 major issues impacting our results. And so in the museum or the arts and culture space, so obviously the museum closure, and there's still some maintenance costs around ensuring that the plant is as well looked after, costs of relocating the collection and getting the building ready, obviously, to start the earthquake strengthening works, as well as the closure of Shimpak. Obviously, therefore, more events have moved to the event centre. That has driven the costs up in the event centre, but also has led to more revenue in the event centre as well. Waste management, so that's probably something that has been bubbling away in the background. Just bear in mind, I can't comment on the Environment Court case, and I'm not going to. But just to put it into perspective, obviously, that the issues there with the stormwater discharge from those significant rain events some time ago is leading to some significant costs with regards to the action that was taken against us and the process that we have to unfortunately go through. Planning and regulatory, so while parking revenue is down significantly due to the rollout and the phasing of the new parking services, it is being offset by actual strong revenues elsewhere, in particular around in some of the other consenting areas. So we're not therefore seeing the full impact on that activity. And in sewage, that's where probably half the electricity expense sit, but we're not seeing the full hit of that as obviously the infrastructure team are looking for efficiency savings elsewhere to help offset that. And in community leadership, which is kind of where a lot of the corporate services and where currently the majority of the general rate sits before we allocate it across, obviously sitting favourable there to help offset the pressures in some of our operational areas. Just an update on electricity. So if I try and do what Porsche did, the trend obviously that we showed last month was increasing. Since then we started to see the decline that we expected down here. But unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a spike back up, and that's once again one of the main gas lines down for maintenance. And so with regards to our goal of entering into a fixed price contract for a period of time while the sector itself gets on top of what's happening with the forward pricing and spot pricing. We couldn't take advantage of that at the time. It got very close to what we were targeting probably at the end of April, but just the recent events of the last couple of weeks has meant that we've seen the pricing hit levels that are unacceptable for us to enter into a forward contract on at the moment. And that's just a summary of what I said. With regards to our capital expenditure, you'll recall we've got a budget of $77.6 million. To date, we've spent $37.7 million, so that's actually quite a significant spend for us. 77% of that is actually on infrastructural projects, so Rotorua sewage scheme, as well as obviously all other Three Waters and roading infrastructure. You'll see there that roading obviously makes up a rather large portion of our capital spend to date as well. Approximately 13% of it relates to arts and culture and recreation, and the majority of that, obviously there's some work that's happening on the museum, Shimpack, and the bulk of that relates to the open spaces places, so replacing boat ramps and those sorts of amenity structures, and 10% on community leadership, so that's predominantly the civic centre refurbishment, which you'll see that's well underway, as well as the replacement of our core enterprise resource planning system, or our ERP, so that's the ozone replacement through to One Council. We don't anticipate spending the $77 million, so there are already a number of projects, as we've indicated before, that are being deferred into the future years, and you'll recall we had those discussions during the annual plan forums, and we've made allowances for those in next year's budget. So if we take where we currently are at the 37.6 million, we are now forecasting capital spend of approximately 60 million for the year, and you'll see therefore that the projects that will contribute towards that to achieve that obviously end of year spend, and we've just listed some of the bigger projects there, and the ones of probably of more significance is obviously finishing the Rotorua plant and the first stage of that piece of work. Significant amount on stormwater improvements, finishing the roading program, water supply, the Whakarewarewa Forest Project, Civic Centre, the lakefront, which obviously JP and Portia just ran you through. Rural seal extensions will get underway, and then there's a cluster of minor and miscellaneous projects that we've all lumped together. So that'll bring us to approximately 60.4 million or thereabouts. So when you bring it all together and look forward to where we expect to end the year, we are, as I indicated before, under pressure with regards to our operating expenditure from those key areas. To quantify that, they're accounting for about $2 million worth of additional expenditure or lost revenue that was unplanned. And at the moment, we are able to offset that. Obviously, over the coming months, that's what we continue to work for. We therefore anticipate to end the year, from an operating perspective, on budget. Our capital spend will be now 15 to 17 million less than planned. Some of those projects that are being deferred are quite heavy in capital subsidies, and so therefore when we piece it together, we therefore anticipate to borrow approximately 10 million less than what was planned as well. So with that, any questions?
Okay, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Thank you for that presentation, Thomas. Obviously, we've got three factors which are determining where we're at in terms of the operational side of things. That's the rates coming in sort of faster than budget, and basically our parking issues not having kicked in, and our utilities expense. Do you see the trend in those three changing significantly between now and year end, or can we see a continuation of those three in proportion right through the year end? Thank you.
So, Councillor, yes, we anticipate that we were expecting electricity expenditure to return back to normal, and we're anticipating how this month will progress, but we are forecasting to get a little bit more pain than normal in the coming months. With regards to the parking revenue, this month will be a telling month with regards to how close we can get to the levels that we anticipate. Now that the service is close to being in full swing, there's still some opportunities around obviously extending parking services into other areas, but this is now going to be the first month where the new vehicle is fully operational and some of the other services are operational. So we should be able to get close to budget, hopefully, but in saying that, it could worsen a little bit over the year, but we're optimistic that it'll hold the current position. And with regards to the rates revenue, we expect that to hold as well. And a big portion of the positive upswing in that was the water by metre, and obviously we're still experiencing a little bit of a dry period, but obviously it's cooled off, but we do expect obviously that those additional revenues, in particular water by metre, will start to taper off.
Just one question before I go to Councillor Gould. Peter, are you going to develop, enhance or change our financial reporting that we've become accustomed to as it comes to council, or have you got new ways of providing that information that you want to develop?
Thank you for the question. I think, yes, we'll continue to expand on offering better granularity and transparency both to the councillors and also to the executive team.
Councillor Gould?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Thomas, for your report. I notice on page 12 it says legal costs largely driven by the Environment Court, and I know verbally you said you won't speak about it, but will legal costs be listed in the annual plan process, which is published at the end of June?
The annual report.
Annual report, sorry.
I can assure you, Councillor, all our expenditure is disclosed in our annual report. With regards to whether that is a line item specifically shown, unlikely. That'll just be in one of the notes with regards to the level of expenditure under legal costs. Yep.
Second question on page 12, you've got staff expenses remain at 2%, favourable to budget as staff vacancies have been absorbed internally where possibly. Does the Rotorua Lakes Council have a large number of vacancies at the moment?
Yeah, 2%, Councillor, as per the report. I think you have to accept the fact that we're a large organisation, and we consistently have about 10% turnover of our staff, and obviously that vacancy percentage recognises that sometimes the difference between when a staff member leaves and a new replacement starts, or where we evaluate the need to replace that staff member and look for efficiencies, and at times, therefore, we don't fill those positions.
Just one further question, Thomas. I know you don't want to comment, and I don't want you to comment on the pros and cons of the Environment Court case, but are you anticipating any further costs above what we had anticipated in our budget?
Yeah, there will be further costs as obviously the case progresses.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, there aren't. That's good. Would someone like to move the report titled Financial Performance for the 9 months ended the 31st of March 2019 be received as presented by Thomas Colley? Moved Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Hunt. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? It is carried. Thank you. What we'll do is we'll just, with your indulgence, we'll just move to page 45 if we can, and we'll ask our Rotorua Airport Limited CEO Mark Gibb if you'd like to come forward, Mark, and we'll bring your report forward. I realise I understand you have other pending engagements, so I thought we'd bring you forward, and so we'll turn to page 45 and welcome, Mark. More good news, I hope.
Always good news from the airport. Kia ora everyone, and thank you very much for having me here today. I'd just like to run through some key highlights over the last quarter and give you a flavour for what sits on our radar for the next 12 months. From a financial perspective, again, we've continued a positive trend with respect to financial performance. We're running about 80,000 K ahead of the run rate this through to Q3. The expectation is we will finish very close, if not over budget, year end. Passenger movements continues to be a good story for us. We're projecting year-end total PAX movements of somewhere around about 263,000. To give you a flavour, that's about a 20,000 person increase over 12 months ago. So it's a very strong trend. The reasons for it are twofold, and we'll do a deeper dive on this as we get to understand why we've got this surge, but it's ostensibly driven through two factors. Firstly, Air New Zealand's fare and the cheaper pricing regime that came forward in March. We've seen that the capacity on aircraft has increased, and we've also seen that the historical drop-off we get on the edge of the shoulder season through Rotorua has pushed out. So we've had very solid loadings that have carried through post-Easter, whereas historically those numbers have tended to drop at the end of March. The other is our perpetual dilemma in and around fog. We do not seem to have had a foggy year this year, unlike some of our neighbours over in Hamilton. So our closure rate has been around about 2%, whereas again, if I track back over the last 5 years, that has spiked at around 5.5% on average. So those two elements alone have conspired to drive some really positive growth in and around passenger movements. Aircraft movements is the other key stat that we monitor. Again, we've had very positive growth in respect of general aviation. The GA sector of our business is an area that we're really looking to grow, and that's broken down into two areas, into fixed wing and into rotary or helicopter movements. And I'll come to a slide shortly that just takes you through where we've got to in relation to the design of a general aviation precinct, which will provide for enhanced hangarage facilities across the airport. We're a safety-centric business. Operational safety incidents are zeros and LTI is zero for the year. So again, that's really positive as safety of our people and our customers is absolutely paramount. The terminal redevelopment is well underway. So for those that have been out there, you will see a large white wrap over what we call Grid Line 7, being the northern end of the old international arrivals hall. That's a particularly complex component of the rebuild. The international arrivals hall, from an engineering perspective, had a new build rating of 45% against a 100% benchmark under the current building code. So there's been a number of challenges in and around seismically re-strengthening that structure. We're about 80% of the way through that. We've got to complete significant work in and around that wall that will happen over the next 2 weeks. We've been through and completed a complete rebrace of the ceiling, structures, the services, etc. through it. And again, I'll show you a couple of photos shortly that will give you a sense of the challenges we've had. The key, though, is we are moving through a fairly rapid-fire redevelopment of the building. So the expectation as we sit today is the entire redevelopment will be completed late November this year. Master plan's advanced. Again, we've put significant effort into the general aviation precinct feasibility, and we're now moving that towards business case. And the key with business case is we're really looking at the cadence in which we propose to develop the GA precinct and how we fund it. And the last issue is safety management. We have a statutory requirement to deliver a safety management system for the airport, and we're looking to implement that by May 2020. So just a slightly deeper dive around a couple of those key points. So the image up on the top left shows the end of the old international arrivals hall removed, propped up. We've had to cut out the slab that sits below it and rebuild that. Once the slab is poured, which will happen over the next couple of days, in goes the steel grid and we rebuild that structure. Out to the right, for those that had an emotional attachment with it, that is the end of the old or the current arrivals hall built in the 60s. So we've trimmed that structure by about 4 metres to enable us to bring machinery in to complete the construction of that wall. If you take yourself right down to the far end of that image, and the image on the bottom right shows what you will greet you in terms of coming airside into landside. We're forecasting to complete this building within about 7 weeks, so we are a fair way through it. Into the departures hall. So the wall you'll see up on the top left is actually, it's a bit sad, it's actually better condition than the existing walls in the building at the moment. That's a construction hoarding. That has gone up. We've demolished the existing toilet block in the departures hall. We've moved the relay tenancy over. We're in the midst of commencing construction of the new toilet block that includes showers, parental changing rooms and a number of other amenities for the airport. Once that's complete, we move forward to demolish the centre part of the building, which again is the risky component. Again, that's got a seismic rating of, subject to which engineering report you read, between 33 to 37%. We've been through a significant amount of the asbestos removal, so the next phase is effectively demolition of that structure, which will occur around July. The bottom image shows you how the new departures hall will look. We are looking to dress that up, and I'll give you a flavour for how that will look very shortly. In terms of the development master plan, just to highlight a couple of key points, and this really just continues the progress that I've indicated over the last couple of presentations. The area out to your right is the general aviation precinct. The area to the left we call Precinct A is to the southern end of the existing heliport and terminal structures. We're doing a lot of work at the moment in and around the heliport and looking to redesign that from a safety and operational perspective, and that will also give us an additional ability to bring in new operators. As well as new operators, we have existing operators that are benefiting from positive growth in their businesses, and we will look to upsize their facilities with them. Down to the left-hand side, we've now got a short waiting list of businesses that wish to come to the airport, which is extremely positive. The caveat on that, though, is how do we bring them in and out safely? So the roundabout that we've highlighted down the bottom, and this sits as part of the broader tonight conversation, is an element of the future of the airport that is critically important. It will open up a significant development opportunity down to the south and enable us to bring in a number of airport-orientated businesses as part of the broader master plan. Up to the top right is the general aviation precinct. So how this will look from a three-dimensional perspective, the two you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, the terminal, we have the air traffic control tower, we have the new emergency operations centre to the right-hand side of it. The general aviation precinct is the area up to the top right. Now that comprises indicatively 26 hangars. We've got 3 different hangar designs, and again this is all subject to a conversation in and around consenting, but in general terms what is proposed fits within the broader frame of what you would expect in an airport. So there's 3 different hangars, simply a place you can park your plane, a place you could park your plane in terms of with additional ablution and kitchen facilities, and we're also considering an option in and around a small apartment attachments to a hangar. And that's sort of a semi-akin to what you might find at, say, Hampton Downs or at Tauranga Airport at the moment, in which people, that are general aviation enthusiasts, they love to spend time in and around the community, and to have an opportunity for people to live over or above or beside their hangar is something that we're really keen to explore. In addition to this, we've made some progress with the current Aero Club and the Gliding Club. It's incredibly important to us to ensure that they are the glue for the general aviation precinct into the future. So I've been invited, as at last evening, along to a meeting with the Aero Club, and I hope to catch up with the Gliding Club over the next few weeks in relation to building a new clubhouse for them. We've also had over recent months concentrated activity from a local flight school that have come in and out of Rotorua Airport. So again, we're kicking off a conversation with them in and around a new flight school facility. So all this, ultimately gets to a point in which we build this type of development. It's positive from an airport perspective in terms of a property play. As an airport in general terms, your aviation business contributes around about 3% of your revenues. Anything over and above that, you need to derive that from a broader property portfolio, a mix of other airport-related activities. What this does for us, though, is it gives us a very positive property return, and obviously all the users of that precinct will also use the runway, They will pay us landing fees, they will drive incremental revenue through other operations and concessions on airport. This ultimately gets to a point in which the contribution from council to the airport to fund our depreciation and interest costs would become less over time, because we would become self-sustaining and self-supporting through the generation of sufficient revenue to cover our overarching costs. So this is why we're doing it in very simple terms. It's not speculative, it's for no other reason than to effectively, in a very common sense, commercially structured and pragmatic way, to get to a point in which the airport ultimately will be self-funding. Rebranding, just to wrap up on a couple of points. So with the assistance of our colleagues at Red, we're looking to roll in the Rotorua Inc. signage. So this is the cheapest rebranding process I think any business has been through. It's cost us around about $1,500 with the help of Michelle, Tom and a number of others. The image was drawn, the image was pulled together in the bottom right-hand corner about a week ago, but when I drove out of the airport last evening, I saw it had been completed, so that was positive. So as the terminal moves through redevelopment to completion, we will swing the new signage and look and feel across the airport. That will also pick up obviously the bilingual opportunity. So if I give you a flavour of how that could look in terms of the departures gates, the image down the bottom, as you would recall, there was a fairly bland image of the wall. I'm very keen to have a chat to a couple of tourism operators out of Rotorua at the moment around their interest in potentially leasing that wall. And we're looking at a whole range of other activities in and around that space in terms of interactive options with children, storytelling around the area, around Makoa, etc., that we bring the airport and that space to life. The website, the airport website needs work, and we've commenced a process in and around rebuilding that, so we will look to have this up and live in around about 6 weeks. And again, it will provide a far better portal for customers to connect in terms of flight times, departures, a range of broader information on the airport, and it will also, back of house, accommodate a lot of our safety management information for users, drones, all that type of activity basically. So that's it. I'm very happy to address any questions from anyone.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your report. Just one observation I've noticed, I know I'm on the flight path, but I think most Rotorua people are. Is there already a huge increase in general aviation use of the airport in terms of private planes and smaller planes, that sort of thing? And has this brought about the development that you've shared with us this morning in terms of park your plane and repair it or maintain it or whatever is required that you're putting on the general aviation precinct? So, or am I I'm just noticing it a bit more?
No, look, I think it's a fair call. Look, I don't believe we as a company could put hand on heart and say that our activities in and around what we're doing at the moment have driven a massive upswing in GA. I think my sense is the general aviation community has now got a high degree of comfort that the airport wants to work with them. And what we're seeing basically is there's more people that are starting to use the airport through the course of the week and in the weekends. The game changer will really be the construct of the general aviation precinct. You know, if I look at, as an airport, we're incredibly blessed in terms of the facilities we have. We've got the third longest runway in New Zealand at 2.35 kilometres. You know, we've got in excess of $30 million of airside infrastructure in place in the airport. The reality, though, is based on 6,500 flight movements, we use 6 to 7% of our air capacity. If you look at Hamilton Airport as an example, they're generating in excess of 100,000 flight movements a year. So we have plenty of upside to accommodate growth. There is a fine line of tolerance, though, between ensuring that the community doesn't become upset by an increase in activity. But in general terms, you know, we are tracking in the right direction. We've had, as I mentioned, over the course of the last month, L3, which are an aviation school based out of Hamilton. They've brought trainee pilots over through Monday, Friday. They bring around about 20 trainee pilots, bring them in. We provide facilities in terms of lecture theatres. They take their aircraft home on the weekends. That type of arrangement is a fantastic arrangement from our perspective. and that's the sort of thing we're looking to grow going forward.
Thanks very much, Mark. Any questions? Your worship.
This is sort of music to our ears that it's underway, actually, and of course you'll hit speed bumps with it. But the issue that I'm really concerned about is that roundabout, and it was good to see you now including that in the footprint for your staged redevelopment. From your balance sheet, are you able to contribute to getting that to a higher priority, or is that something that we keep betting with NZTA that we just must have? I say that because of what it can unlock, and you mentioned that. So what's the airport company's decision around the roundabout?
Any contribution towards a roundabout ultimately is a board decision, and we've yet to have that conversation. We have, though, had fantastic support from Council and Stavros in and around rolling conversations with NZTA. We have a visit from NZTA on the 15th of this month, in which they're coming to the airport to understand, from our perspective, what the safety issues, concerns, and economic growth and growth trajectory looks like within the airport. And we're looking to, and that was a request by NZTA to come and have that conversation. So we're looking forward to putting our case forward in that respect. But we are working very closely with Council in and around this whole issue.
And can I just add there that with the extra movements, it means more and more people pouring onto Tino Road. You know all of this. We discussed this, but the danger now, I think we're just incredibly lucky that nobody's been hurt because of the oncoming traffic at the speed at which they go. So I wish you well with NZTA and Stavros at that meeting. This is becoming a very high safety priority, as well as unlocking potential.
Yes, well, Her Worship, it's unfortunately that I've had a couple of my people attend to death at the entrance to the airport over the last 3 months. So we have had a fatality out there. And again, there was an incident just 2 weeks ago. You know, it is becoming a regular thing for us, and it's an issue that our people have to deal with.
Councillor Gould.
Chairman, thank you, Mark, for your report. On the report on pages 3 and 4, Project Business Lounge, and I noticed that Air New Zealand confirmed that they will not invest in a business lounge. You also stated that you're going to have a quiet working space. Does that mean it's going to be sealed, and does that mean it's going to be paid? Because if you don't have a sealed area, the noise from the people in the ordinary lounge will be terrific, and the people wanting to do work quietly will not be able to do their respective work.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Look, at the last board meeting we had, this was a topic of some conversation and debate. Where this has landed is the board have agreed a set of principles in and around a lounge. It will not be your atypical business lounge in which alcohol, food, a number of other services are provided. We are absolutely resolved to provide a business space for people, which is what we're looking to glue together at the present time. We have an area identified that positively sits within to the southern end of the main arrivals hall. So there'll be no incremental cost whatsoever in terms of building it. It simply becomes a fit-out exercise. So over the course of the ensuing 4 weeks, I've been asked to pull together a business case and framework for how that will come together. That will go up for the June 15 board meeting, and we would hope as a collective board and management that facility is open by the time the broader terminal opens in December. But it's very much designed in and around a space for people, for business, a quiet area to work, to relate.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
For your presentation, and thank you very much for putting some flavour and colour to the working drawings. My question's really about the accommodation provided above the GA. Is that likely to be leased, and will you put is the possibility to put accommodation above all of those aspects, or to future-proof it should you wish to increase that accommodation offering?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So we've looked at a number of different scenarios in and around the optimum commercial model to deliver the precinct. At this stage, it's looking as though it's going to be a design build, which basically means that we will take standard buildings. We will receive demand. We will respond to demand by delivering one of 3 different building footprints. and we will own the building into the future. Airside buildings are a bit like beachfront real estate. You only have so much of it, and you have to cherish it from a range of perspectives. In terms of the residential, that's a concept we've been playing with for some time. There's a bit of work that needs to be done with council in and around residential in an airport, parking, and a whole series of issues. But our general sense from the market is there will be quite a degree of demand for it. That's demonstrated through Tauranga. We are about to go to market through an RFI process seeking registrations of interest for people that may wish to locate themselves on airport, and we will get a better sense of the depth of demand once we step through that exercise. But certainly future-proofing and providing it if we can, we will certainly provide it.
Small question, Mr. Martin.
Two very quick questions, Mr. Chairman. The Jean Batten Heritage Wall, still in place or been shifted?
No, it is still in place and it will be in place. It will be taken down and cherished and looked after while we go through redevelopment, and will be re-erected.
Thank you. Second question, private jets arrivals. Could we have a summary in the next report, please?
Yes, absolutely. I certainly can't tell you who's on those, as we are bound by significant confidentiality in terms of the people that travel on these jets, but I can give you a general feel for the number of flights that we do get through and just how that sort of spikes over summer. Just so you understand, as part of the redevelopment, we've built enhanced facilities from an MPI and customs perspective. What we're looking to do is provide better facilities for private jets to come into the airport. As I've picked up previously, scanning and security is a big issue. All this comes into part of an enhanced blanket of security in and around that. As of yesterday, CAA have indicated that they will start looking to scan all cargo hold baggage going through the airport. And again, from our perspective, we are very positively positioned to deal with that because, again, we've built ahead of the curve in terms of this type of thing. But absolutely very happy to provide you with some data in and around the jets.
Thank you, Mark. Finally, Councillor Maxwell, and then we'll break for a short break.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, Mark, can consideration yourself or Stavros at the meeting that's coming up take into account Rua Matars? That's the school, and even the marae, which is at the edge of the long runway. They have issues getting in and out of onto the road. I know it's not as serious as the one coming out of the airport raised by the Mayor, but if consideration could be taken for their issues too, please.
Thank you very much. I have a meeting on Monday, all going well with Peroni and Neraha from Ngāti Kukopako, so we have a regular kuro around this sort of stuff, and I'll absolutely raise it with them.
Thank you. And just finally, do we have a bird problem out there? Because I recall a month ago, I was on the same flight as the chairman of our committee here, and we were going flat out down the runway, and then it pulled over, and the pilot said, "Oh, we're going to do it again. We've had a bird problem." And I thought, it's never happened to me before, but I didn't think we had a problem out there.
Yes, we do. The unfortunate thing with birds is no matter whether you build an airport or don't build an airport, historically they tend to fly the same course, regardless of whether there's a runway there or not. So we certainly don't encourage birds to utilise our facilities where possible, but we have...
Shall we get some falcons out there?
Yes, well, no, we do. Look, we when you see, typically if you're about to get on a flight, you'll see 10 minutes before the flight goes, our guys will be out there clearing the runway. So we use a range of different ways in which we do that. We've got gas cannons, we've got a whole series of things. Positively, we are trending down. That's a last resort, but it is a constant challenge for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would someone like to move the operational financial update from the Rotorua Airport Limited be received for the third quarter? Councillor Gould, seconded Mr. Waru. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much, Mark. We look forward to your next report, and we'll take a 5 or 10 minute break, and then we'll go to Michelle from the Rotorua Economic Development Limited. So that gives you a bit of time to have a cup of tea, Michelle, and get ready for the onslaught. Thank you very much.
we're doing around Tech Week. So I've prioritised those two things, and I haven't focused.
Just before
Yes, Your Worship.
she gets underway, would Councillor Gold like to join us at the table? Okay.
It's all right.
Well, I don't think that's a point of order, but he can actually sit wherever he likes. But it's nice to have you at the table, Councillor Gould. Michelle, welcome again. And thank you for the 3 priority areas. Could you
priority areas.
Say what they are again, please?
So one, just a quick update on key activities. One on the In Rotorua app we've created, and the last thing is Tech Week. So I haven't chosen to provide a lot of updates on macroeconomic indicators. I'm happy to talk to those, but just prioritised. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So financial reporting, as per the report, we have a number of variances against budget. Key one is our revenue is slightly down. That's very much been driven by lower commission sales at the eyesight. Obviously, the Red Board is having a very close look at that, as well as myself at an operational level. We have seen less expenditure coming through, and that's consistent nationally. However, our eyesight has mitigated some of those costs through increased retail sales. Our salaries and wages are down, although I'm pleased to report that since the 31st of March we have filled a number of vacancies, so that will be addressed. And we actually have a large number of scale projects which were always scheduled to be delivered in the April, May quarters, and invoicing is coming through, and we're expecting to end on a balanced budget. Moving on to the In Rotorua app. This app has been developed really for business locally, and we're very excited about it. Delegates are an important part of our visitor ecosystem. We receive between 75 and 80,000 delegates a year. And the development of this app is really to enable local business and our wider community to take advantage of delegates while they're here. And one of our challenges is, how do we get information out to this disparate group of people? How do we make sure that taxis know that there's a big conference on? How do we make sure that our retailers, our hospitality, interesting hotels, motels have as much forward planning information so that they can capitalise and create profit opportunities from this, including our attractions and activities. So one of my goals is, because you're very committed to this meeting, I note councillors aren't sitting with their mobile phones at the table, but I'd really encourage you to download the In Rotorua app. And you'll see just up on the screen, the app is free. Anyone can download it, and you'll get a list of all the conferences that are currently secured for Rotorua, and it goes out because a lot of our conferences are booked up to 2 years in advance. It'll highlight start and finish dates, but also we're putting in information such as the timing of social events, and that's partly to help people understand when delegates are likely to have free nights. So recently we had the International Union of Health Professionals and Educators in town, very large-scale conference, and on the Monday and Tuesday nights they didn't have formal program activities, and so it was fantastic to see our restaurants and retailers having people, some of whom were wearing lanyards, walking around, walking through Te Manawa, shopping in the city. So really encourage people to download that app. It also will push messages to you, so you get updates on what's happening. And I think it also showcases the diversity of things that are happening in our destination. So delegates are important because they're some of our highest yield visitors. Average spend is around $465 per day. And the other thing is all these conferences also bring some of the best global minds and thought leaders to Rotorua, and it's a chance for us to engage and be part of a global system. Excitingly looking forward, this app has been so successful that we're also working on creating a second iteration where hopefully industry can talk and the community can engage directly with delegates. The app was developed locally using local talent. Another highlight for us is that the Department of Conservation opened at Eyesight Fenton Street on the 1st of March. This partnership is really about making sure that not only are we welcoming visitors, but also we're providing information on how visitors can engage with our natural environment and our community sustainably. Department of Conservation have also been working with us closely to help new operators and businesses ensure that they're meeting the requirements of the local environment. Another really exciting development for us is our focus on food provenance, and that has something that we've worked on over the last few years, coming off the back of our perception research, which is that while people come here and have an incredible experience of the natural environment, of the culture, one of their disappointments is that there's not a local food sort of provision readily available across the hospitality space. So we've been working with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council to undertake some research looking at impact investment in this area. Key things we're doing is looking at the commercial parameters. I'm from a farming background myself, and I know that there needs to be a strong commercial imperative to change land use, and we need to make sure that we've got information on how the supply chain actually works and actually the details on what the demand is. This work and project is underway at the moment. We're getting feedback so that we can actually map out a business feasibility case for people and identifying local providers and the skills and capability to achieve those goals. We're also showcasing some of our local food because while it's not evident in every restaurant that you go to or every hospitality, we do have some fantastic local food that's produced here. So we're taking the opportunity of trends to showcase some locally inspired canapes to people. Skills, education and talent. As mentioned at the last update, we've been working with schools on how we support them target international students who will make a positive contribution to schools' operating environment. International students contributed $71 million to the Rotorua economy as at February 2018. We're just waiting on the latest update of information. And we've also developed a program we're calling the Kuaka program, based on our Godwit theming at the Eyesight. And that's working with Te Wānanga o Aotearoa on an internship program which will enable students to come and work actively in the visitor centre alongside our travel consultants. Responsible business practices. We've also been working in partnership around the Te Aki Promise, which is a Tourism New Zealand and private sector initiative around sustainable tourism, to provide information to anyone who's looking at camping or journeying through our space. And it's actually just coming to the end of the summer period, and the people we've engaged with, it's been really successful in making sure that they respect our environment and our culture. Another priority project has been looking at the development of the circular economy, and our future work over the next year is this is a key focus for us, and it's partly working in partnership with talent that we have locally at Scion and their capability to look at how Rotorua can play an important part in whole-of-life solutions for products. As you know, Scion has incredible technologies using wood fibre to replace plastics, and we think that's something that, as a destination, we should take a lead on. A great pathway to that was hosting, as a destination, the first Ellen MacArthur Summit in the Pacific, held recently at Tapuia. It was an incredible conference that was a real catalyst for creating further commercial opportunities to join people up who've got challenges around whole-of-life packaging with solutions that are being crafted and created here in Rotorua. An example of that is Te Ahunga have worked with Crankworks to do a case study around international level events, use of plastic, and finding ways of reducing single-use plastic at international events. We're also changing the way we reach visitors, so we do quite a lot of direct-to-consumer domestic campaign activity, and we're the first region in New Zealand to do a pilot direct-to-consumer internationally. One of the key reasons for that is we know people's behaviours are changing, and we know that a lot of people are doing their own research when they travel, and we have taken the opportunity to work with some big data so that when people make a booking to come to New Zealand, we can actually target and engage those people. So we know that people tend to book and make a decision to come to New Zealand, and we are keen to pilot and understand how we influence as a destination their decision on where they're going to go in New Zealand. So it's critical for us that when people are planning their itinerary, that they're mapping out and putting Rotorua as part of their itinerary. Part of this is based on feedback and research we've had, which is a lot of international visitors. Our average stay is still just over 1.5 nights on average, so it's averages. And the saddest thing is a number of people who say, oh, when I got to Rotorua, I was really disappointed. I didn't realise how much there was to do here. But unfortunately, I've booked, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else. So we're thrilled that they are exploring the whole of New Zealand, but obviously our key is to inspire people to come to Rotorua and lock in for longer. We hosted Crankworks Media Centre, and again, it's an incredibly valuable opportunity for us to showcase to such a range of media. Some of them are mountain biking, but some of them are more general media, and we work hard to ensure that they have a view of not just what the mountain biking opportunities are. I might upset Deputy Dave, because we know that's a key draw card, but also to understand the breadth of other things you can do in Rotorua as well. Our new campaign activity has been underway in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and we've just finished a number of campaign activities in Christchurch, which saw a 60% uplift year on year in web traffic to Rotorua NZ. We actually now distribute, in partnership with industry, over 110,000 copies of the Rotorua magazine. And while it's old-fashioned, it's a hard copy magazine, we do receive fantastic feedback from people on just being able to flick through it and look at the opportunities. Domestic spend has not been growing at a level we had anticipated. So our year-on-year data shows that spend is only up 2.8%, but domestic spend in the destination is now making up 57% of our total visitor expenditure. So that market is still critically important for us to engage with. Looking forward to the future, if you didn't know, Trends is about to kick off. They're actually doing the pack-in at the moment, and this will be our largest ever representation at Trends from Rotorua operators, with 33 exhibitors on the stand. Tourism's a $39.1 billion industry in New Zealand, so Trends is a critical opportunity to showcase to the world what New Zealand offers, and importantly for Rotorua, who's been fortunate to host Trends previously, what's changed since they were here last. And that's been a big focus for us, to make sure delegates have a real understanding of what's happening and what's changed and what's even more exciting and the reasons to come back again. Direct expenditure from Trends is estimated around $2 million, so that's direct expenditure straight into the economy. We're also working in partnership with Google at the moment to support local businesses and how they profile their business using Google. Google's the largest search engine outside of excluding China. And in the time I've been talking, around 38 million people will have undertaken Google searches. This partnership enables us to support local business to profile their business more effectively, and our objective is that it helps change perception around Rotorua by providing people with better quality information. So some of the initiatives are just workshop training sessions we'll be holding with local businesses on how they can access free guidance to update their profile. And one of the exciting things is ensuring that we can move from Street View, if you're familiar with Street View. You'll soon be able to, or you can already, use Street View to showcase experiences. So instead of talking about eagle versus shark, or as you do, which I talk about a lot, or box of birds, which are mountain biking trails up in the forest, people will be able to basically drive electronically through those experiences. What's also exciting is they will also be able to jump inside a Ogo, or they can go to Mitai and have a look at the new showcase of things there. And it's a great way to update people on what's happening. So we'll be working hard. We've already done some initial updates around the eyesight and Te Aka Māori, and we'll be uploading those as quickly as we can. Last thing, Mr. Chair, is to highlight Tech Week. So we are facilitating and coordinating the profiling of Rotorua business, technology and talent locally for Tech Week. It's pretty cool for us to have Tech Week, to be honest. Tech Week happens nationally, and we've never had an official Tech Week. So this is a great chance to showcase just how sophisticated and exciting this area of Rotorua is. We're working with Toi Oho Mai, Digital Native Academy, the Rotorua Library, Rotorua X, Basecamp and Chorus. So again, I really encourage councillors and members of the public to go online to techweek.co.nz and sign up for these opportunities. The event launches on Friday, the day after Trends ends, so We like to do a lot here in Rotorua. So Trends finishes the launch event on the 17th of May at Tapuia, featuring Chris Auld from Microsoft and Napera Riley of Figure NZ. And they're going to be talking about the impact of artificial intelligence, big data, and new tech on Rotorua's future. We've also got an esports tournament and workshop to try and help educate parents and educators and children on wellbeing and resilience when engaging with e-gaming. Rotorua Library is putting on events which encourage people of all ages to engage with technology. And we've also got a number of storytelling experiences with rangatahi, encouraging youth to look at tech as a future career, digital storytelling, and also a co-working day at Digital Base Camp. Those are the highlights. Believe it or not, there's even more. So it's received huge national engagement across New Zealand, with people saying, actually, we really like what Rotorua's doing. We like the connections that have been made through this. So come along. It's going to be a fantastic week.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So just harking back to Tech Week, so we go on to techweek.co.nz and we register just for that event on the 23rd at between 4 and 7? Or are there other activities we can engage in?
You can, there's a whole menu of activities, and you can just pick and choose which ones you would like to participate in.
Any questions? Councillor Kent, Councillor Donaldson, who worship the Mayor, Mr Waru, and that's it, we'll move on.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Through you. Thank you for your report this morning. This Google partnership, how much is it costing the council, and what assurance do you have that it is actually going to locate anything in Rotorua remotely in the right part of the country?
Thank you, Councillor. The cost it's a shared cost, so we're actually working with 2 other regional providers. Because we negotiated a special deal, I'm happy to provide that in confidence. It's not a significant amount of money, mostly because we're sharing the cost with Hamilton Waikato and Tauranga in Eastern Bay. One of the best things from my perspective is, because we will become an accredited partner, is we will be able to fix some of those niggly issues, which is quite hard to engage with a major entity like Google when the pin drops and you find yourself navigated to somewhere which isn't where you want to be. So one of our motivations was to be able to fix that. But it's also putting it in the hands of business owners that they will be able to more easily correct those things as well, and so provide better information so that we do avoid that and we use the tool as it's intended to be used.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you. Michelle, I regularly visit the dashboard on your website, just looking at the progress towards the 2030 visitor expenditure goal, and we appear to have a little bit of a taper or plateauing there at the moment. But I'm also mindful of a number of occasions where anecdotally I've heard the eyesight have said the city is booked out in terms of commercial accommodation that's listed at the eyesight. And then we see a report that says Rotorua is going to need 500 additional 5-star hotel beds by 2020. So can you put all that in perspective for us? Because it's important, I think, given the investment in the lakefront, to stimulate that type of investment, just that we have that confidence in the future of the visitor industry.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Yes, there's been a number of monitoring figures which have come out which show that and sorry, I'm putting this together in my mind, how I'm going to answer this question. So for December, January and February, we had some particularly large drops in visitor numbers from specific markets. Our visitor numbers from China were down around 20%. Our visitor numbers from Australia were reasonably flat. Our visitor arrival numbers out of Auckland, particularly in January and February, were almost, I think they were 0.3% up. And that was fairly alarming. What was also concerning is at the same time, industry was telling us that we had this most extraordinary weather pattern, and I apologise to anyone with farming interests, because basically it's been a drought, so it's actually had severe economic impact, this extended dry period, on farm profitability. But for the tourism industry and for our destination, we had some of the highest number of fine days, which means attraction and activity engagement, willingness of people to travel to the destination was high. So visitor numbers were strong, people were spending less. And across New Zealand, we've seen a tapering of international visitor numbers out of key markets. So the UK slow, Australia slow, the US has been incredibly strong, but China down by, I think, 26%. That led to a number of profit warnings from major tourism entities, because what we've realised is that growth and that wall of tourists we're expecting, most of us had done our predictions on a fairly consistent line. Interestingly, we've been busier from an inward investment point of view than we've ever been. I thought it was busy before, but it's the busiest we've ever been. And when we talk to those investors, we say, we need to be honest, our last 3 months have been a bit not what we expected. And their view is this is just a slight dip. They feel that the macroeconomic environment had significant impacts. So Brexit, concerns in Europe, low growth, GDP growth, concerns around housing costs in Australia, and China, again, at a big macro level. What we've seen is all of those markets, though, actually stabilising, and the forward predictions actually look positive. So there appears to be some good resilience built in, but investors are looking over 20 to 30 year minimum lifespan of their capital expenditure, and they are very confident. Yesterday at a meeting I mentioned, and over the weekend I had a number of meetings, but there's some incredible things happening in our wider ecosystem. So the New Zealand Transport Authority has now released their estimates of what some of the State Highway 1 motorway extensions, the impact on travel times. So as they complete those highway developments, particularly Takanini interchange, bypass of Huntly, the bypass of Hamilton and the Cambridge Highway, the estimate is that will take 30 to 40 minutes off travel time if you chose that route from Auckland to Rotorua. That is significant. Those extensions are due to be completed by end of 2020. And when we look at Auckland being our critical gateway destination for international visitors, the concept that they can be in Rotorua in around 2 hours on a major highway is significant. For Auckland, Bay of Plenty, even Hamilton Waikato visitors, who are incredibly important to our tourism sector, their ability to get here in reduced time is actually quite transformational. 3 hours is quite a mental burden for getting in the car and driving, and then if you're worried about traffic hold-ups and delays, just over 2 hours is very much a game changer. And interestingly, the people who've flagged that to us first are the private equity and investment companies who are advising investors, saying this is a game changer for Rotorua. I'm not dismissing that we have transport infrastructure things that need to be focused on here locally, but those macro level things are giving people a lot of confidence.
For your report, we're out of time. Would someone like to move that the Rotorua Economic Development Limited third quarter report be received? Councillor Hunt, seconded Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Now we'll go back to our agenda. Thank you very much, Michelle. Recommendation 2, the non-financial performances for the 6 months into the 31st of December. Uni, you're going to take us through this overview of this report on page 14. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, councillors. Right, so non-financial performance measures to the end of December. So we're 6 months into the reporting for the current financial year. And I just want to take a couple of moments just to, I suppose, reposition the non-financial performance measures in the context of the LTP. So remembering that the measures that are in front of you are part of our long-term plan. Mm-hmm. And as a part of that, we report finally on the performance of that within the annual report, which will be finalised in October this year. Throughout the course of the year, we bring to you progress along during the year. So at this point in time, we have the results of 6 months, and I do want to apologise. Yes, this report is a little bit later in coming to you than would previously do for reporting on 6 months. There are a couple of reasons for that. One is you will note that we do have a number of new measures in our framework this year, and a lot of them do require the setting of a new baseline and looking at new targets for the years ahead. So there is a requirement for a little bit more analysis when we get the results in of each quarter, in terms of also looking forward towards the end of the year when we finalise this year, and looking forward to establishing those baselines and targets for subsequent years. So in terms of overall progress, we have 62 measures within the measurement framework this year, and of those, and as at today's date, 47 of those have been measured, and 36% of those are well on track, showing really good progress of 77%, which actually puts us ahead of the same point in time last year. What we have identified at this stage already is that there are a number of measures, there's 4 of them, that at this we know now will not be able to be achieved, and the group managers associated with those areas will be able to elaborate on those more with questions from yourselves. And I just want to highlight lastly that the 15 measures that come under the realm of sort of true customer satisfaction questions, that survey is well underway, with online surveys being undertaken this year, and we are getting really good responses from our community in terms of actually completing and undertaking an online survey. So we're getting some really good response rates and hits, which does show that people much prefer interacting with us and providing feedback in an online way as opposed to the traditional telephone survey. So I'm going to leave it there, and through myself and through the chair, we'll take questions on the different activities, which will be answered by group managers.
Now, when you qualify in the comments column that there's an alteration, when will the alteration to the target or how it's measured change? Will it be the next financial year? You know, like conditions change. When does that come into effect?
There's going to be a slight little tricky overlap here in that probably when I get the results of Q3 finalised, it will be at the same time as that we are looking to publish the annual plan. And our annual plan will have to set out what the performance measures and framework are for the next year. Oh, okay. So we will be doing a bit of analysis that will look at where are we at in terms of Q3 and rolling those into the annual plan. So we'll be doing that then.
Thank you for that. Any questions of Una's report? Would someone like to move that Oh, do you want? Okay, yep. What I thought I would do, just so that the issues and the KPIs are highlighted, we'll take them page by page. If anyone's got any questions, so we'll go to page 20, and your KPIs there are the Energy Event Centre, the Arts and Culture. Are there any questions there? None. Library. 22 Governance. Te Arawa Partnership, Civil Defence, Animal Control, Inspections, Planning and Policing and Consenting. Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you, on page 25, probably a question for Simon up there, just around the processing of subdivision consents, and I see that there's fewer, but they're bigger and trickier. How are we placed with resourcing and processing those? Just some, I guess, a bit clearer picture for our information, please.
Henry.
Thank you. Look, I guess look, where we're placed is we've had an increase in resource in our team, and we've had an extra couple of planners over the last 12 months. We've also increased our capability in terms of our minute taking and our pre-application, the front ending of a lot of our processes. So we've got an administration assistance there for that. And we've realigned our team to make sure we've got a major projects team, and they're focusing specifically on those consents that are more complicated, the greenfield developments. So that's sort of how we've combating the increase in the complexity and overall the increase in just general consents.
Thank you. And sort of supplementary through you, Mr Chair, I guess there's a lot more diligence in terms of stormwater management with subdivision consents post the heavy weather events of the previous years.
Through you, Mr Chair, yes, there absolutely is. Our approach to that is to, I guess we're a part of a working group with some outcomes from that review. So we're working together closely with Regional Council on that, and there's some good positive results being achieved, and some that we're still working on. But the key there was really that relationship, continuing to build that relationship, and we're stronger and more connected than we ever have been.
Now we turn to page 27. One of the things in the economic development area that... sorry, Tanya, question? Yep, all right.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and
25.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, it was back on page 25, and just the question around the consents as well, because I'm wondering, given that now the new district plan doesn't require consent for the straightforward processes, if the measurement tool that we're using actually isn't still accurately reflecting the work that's being done, because I know that the consent team has been working very hard on this to process the applications. We've put more resourcing there, we're doing everything that we can on our end, yet it's still showing that we haven't achieved target. So first question is just whether the KPI and how we're measuring it is still accurate. The second question, and perhaps for the Chief Executive, I believe it was in the 18-19 annual report, and we reported that we consented 153 homes, which was up from, just doing this off the top of my head, I believe it was 90-something homes the year prior. So we have seen a significant increase in the homes we're consenting, and I'm wondering if we do have the numbers or results on how many homes we have consented in the last financial year. And please feel free to bring that back. I know that's a complicated question, but I'm just trying to get a picture for council and also our community just how many homes we are processing through our teams. I mean, we talk about subdivisions, but the individual homes as well. And I want to bring that up and look at that because it's significant in terms of dealing with the growth and the housing crisis that we're facing, and knowing in our spatial plan that we've highlighted that in 30 years our population will be 100,000, which means we need up to 500 new homes each year. So we're doing all that we can, but I'm just wondering if we have any figures on the amount of homes that we've done in the last financial year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and probably the first question from Councillor Tapsell was around the percentage. The KPIs were set under a slightly different regime with different planning rules in place. It's probably not a reason to change it. I think it can sit there still as an aspirational target, but you actually are right that by the district plan streamlining more activities, enabling more activities to happen without a consent in a sort of purely numbers way, it sort of robbed us of some easy wins in terms of the time frames. So we absolutely still aspire to hit those numbers, but we also are quite happy we're not gaming them either. So probably the second element around houses that we will bring the actual number back. My sense of where we're going to end the year is probably, or hopefully, reasonably well up on our subdivision lots. So more than we would have expected and hoped for in terms of the lots, which then create the potential, obviously, for the building, and probably not quite there on the building themselves. So I think what we do need to see is the conversion of those available lots into actual buildings. But it's also critical to get those lots up. So what we're expecting to see is we've got a big number in the pipeline. We're expecting to see a big number of available lots coming through. But then you're totally right. We still need to see it convert into actual houses. And I think we'll probably be down on that number at year end, but probably reasonably well up on the available lots. So hopefully next year we'll see both numbers really high.
One of the pleasing things here, Henry, is the building consents being processed in a more timely fashion. Mayor Chadwick?
On that, I think what we're talking about is wanting to see how many homes are being built. And we used to, now we hear subdivisions, lots, but we want to see the measure. It's probably going to come out in wellness measures. How many homes are we building and how many families,
Well, yesterday in Parliament, the Minister said that New Zealand's building activity is the highest it has been since 1972, with new builds of 36,000 across New Zealand. That includes state houses, private houses, the few that have been built through that something build, Kiwi build, and then the fourth one is not Kiwi Save.
But my point is,
we want to know
that's
locally.
the speak that we like. So that when we're all out there talking to our community, we can say there have been 50 homes built or 100 or whatever, so that we know the incremental build. And it means more to us. It's like the speak in tourism of occupancy and bed stays and things. It's not the language we use as politicians. So could it be reflected in the future of the number of homes?
Maybe through you, Mr. Chair, look, each operations report, we do report on both numbers. So the first number we always report on is the number of lots coming through, and the second is the building consents for the.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you, Your Worship, because Michelle Templer, and she was talking about being a drop off in this, that, and the other. Rotorua has been chock-a-block since the 1st of November. My sister who lives in Hara, 3 times she's tried to get a motel here. Was it last weekend we had the marathon that we had Crankworks and all these. But I think the local activity, the local tourism activity, is taking up the slack that where the internationals are decreasing. Mr. Waru.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Ho tira tātou katoa. No, it was just to add to the comment there. I think, you know, we grant consents. We can't make people build. So that's a totally different kōrero. So, you know, we've got to be careful when we're talking about how many houses we're building. We're not building them. We're consenting to have them built.
Same with subdivisions. We consent subdivisions, but they can take up to 5 years to come through. Okay, now we're on to the airport and economic development. You know, sorry, Rob? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're going back to...
page 28. I just want to raise the issue of the number of retail and office spaces not tenanted in the CBD. We're saying that's on track, but we've only got figures here for December 2018. Do we have any more updated information than that? And what is the trend, please?
JP?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my recollection is that we use the external surveys that are undertaken by Telfer and Young, which is done annually. So we have an annual figure that we use for that measure. They do some updates, but they tend to segment it. So they do have an update usually that comes out in September, which is more about the commercial, more about the industrial space. So we'll check again whether there's an update that's relevant to come in as a final position, but it's the annual report I understand we use.
Thank you. And as a supplementary to that, we used to have stats on pedestrian counts in the CBD. Where have they disappeared to?
Yeah, councillors, yes, we had a significantly longer list of measures that we used in the last LTP. If you recall, with this LTP, we shortened that number down considerably. And if you also recall, we had a significant amount of debate about the value of the pedestrian counts because changes in developments or redevelopments of different parts of town left us with skewed numbers where it may be up on one street, down on another, overall picture unclear. And this was in some aspects not relatable to what the occupancy rates were, so we chose to drop that one and just remain with the occupancy.
It raises a very good question because, you know, how do we counter the accusations that the developments we've done in the CBD have had an adverse effect on pedestrian numbers and business activity within that CBD? So, I mean, who do we rely on to measure that? Is Telfer Young the best provider?
Through Mr. Chair, I suppose the simple answer is yes, they're an independent organisation that, as they're part of their business of supporting the real estate industry and the letting and leasing of properties, they do track the different quality standards of the commercial industrial space within the CBD, so they are totally independent of us, and we receive the same report that they issue out publicly, and also used to support those different real estate agents who try and move those commercial properties.
Thank you. Page 29, you've got sport and recreation and environment. Then roads and footpaths on page 31. If you're into sewage and sewage, page 33 is your cup of tea. Then we move to stormwater and land drainage. Most of those are on track. The next page is waste management. Any questions there? You see, this is where the question I asked Una was, when the environment changes, so those figures get altered annually, don't they? But how do you take into account you can't do climatic stuff? If it wasn't for those climatic conditions, we would have been on track with that, with the green and wood waste and the number of tonnes per annum of concrete waste recovered. Okay, it's okay. Page 39, page 40. Water supplies. There shouldn't be any questions on our water supplies. We have a fantastic water supply. Says Mamaku. No, Mamaku does. Stavros is. Oh.
So, remember, Chair, at the end of
this financial year.
At the end of December, I believe Mamaku hadn't yet come online. Is that right, Stavros? Yes. So in the next quarter, you'll see that it is.
That's where the ozone and the chlorine. Yep. Okay. so that's basically it, to the end of page 44. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson.
The non-financial performance for 6 months ended 31 December.
2018 be received, seconded by Councillor Kumar. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We'll now move to the resolution to go into public excluded.
We do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, point of order, Councillor Kent.
Not a point of order, just a question, is when are we going to see some figures for Infracorp?
Oh, I did ask that question. Infracorp's report will come through at our next meeting in June to coincide with their board meeting. It fell out of sync. Yeah, good point. Thank you for raising that, Councillor Kent. Yeah. Would someone like to move that we have 2 confidential reports to be discussed? Would someone like to move that we go into public excluded? Moved Mr. Waru, seconded Her Worship the Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. The 2 reports are the extension of term and value contracts for streetlight maintenance and the extension of a contract value for the Rotorua Sewage Scheme reticulation. The reasons for going into public excluded session is they are commercially sensitive and to enable commercial or industrial negotiations to occur. Do we have to wait